think we're going to get started. It's 5 minutes past. We'll probably have a few people wander in. Welcome to our panel at CXC, my favorite conference. I love coming here, and it's always an honor and a delight to be here at CXC. Our panel today is on the past, present, and future of comics education, which has that kind of cool Dickensian feel. It goes Christmas past, present, and future. So we'll talk a
which
little
one
bit
is which here?
about, right? Well, they do bleed, obviously, into one another. So I'm very excited to get to chat with these amazing folks about comics education. Before we start, I am just curious, how many of you would say, you're all comics fans, I'm assuming, but how many of you would you say that you're comics educators, librarians, teachers? Okay, all right, okay. And then potential students, possibly? Okay, cool, excellent. Always a student, right? A student of life. Okay, that's perfect. I was just kind of curious about our audience today. Well, thank you all for being here. The plan, we have about 40-ish minutes, a little give or take, about 40 minutes to chat. I have a few questions, but we're going to spend a lot of time letting all of you ask questions. What a great opportunity to ask comics educators from different institutions about different programs and pathways and things like that. So we'll make sure to have plenty of time for you to ask questions. But before we start, I was hoping we could do, I'll start with an introduction, and then if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself. I'm Susan Kirtley. I am the director of the Comic Studies program at Portland State University. And a professor in the English department there.
Hi, I'm Patrick Lay. I'm a visiting professor of comics and narrative practice at Columbus College of Art and Design here in Columbus, and a graduate of the California College of the Arts MFA in Comics program.
I'm Carly Schuster. I'm the assistant director for Sequential Arts Workshop. I graduated from SAW as well as California College of the Arts MFA program.
Oh, cool. I'm Conor Stechschulte. I teach, I'm actually a professor of print media at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, where I also went to grad school there for print media, and I went to the Maryland Institute College of Art before that for painting,
That's actually a perfect segue, because I thought since the title is Past, Present, and Future, I was curious a little bit about your own sort of past education in comics. Just kind of curious, it sounds like everyone has studied comics, but I'd be curious, what did you study? That wasn't always the case, right? So I'm curious about your own experience learning about and learning to make comics, and also how does that kind of play into your own role as an educator? I don't know if anyone wants to jump in first.
I guess I can, so I don't have a lot of actual formal education in comics. There was only one comics course offered at my undergraduate school, so I took that one with Brian Ralph, which was amazing. And then when I decided I wanted to go to grad school, I was already a practicing cartoonist. I'd already published, done a lot of self-publishing, published a small book of Fantagraphics and stuff. But I was like, I didn't really want to go to a comics-focused program. I was attracted to SAIC because I could go in through whatever door, and then I studied with writers, with filmmakers, with painters, some cartoonists, but it was more like I kind of wanted to do the synthesizing of image and writing myself in that program, and that's what I got to do, which was really cool. And then now I'm doing sort of a similar thing where I only teach one comics-focused course, and it's called Comics to Print, and it's a print-focused comics course. We draw comics, and then every comic that they draw, we print. And then otherwise, I'm teaching classes in self-publishing, zines, and things like that. So I'm also teaching outside of comics, but those classes are often full of many cartoonists.
You're next.
Okay. I started out studying biomedical stuff. I wanted to be a doctor, blah blah blah, and I kept failing. So then I switched to art history. I'd always been drawing. In undergrad, I switched to art history, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I like art. And then I discovered that Tom Hart lived in Gainesville, Florida, and I read his it was the first graphic novel I ever read. it's a heart-wrenching graphic novel called Rosalie Lightning, and I was like, holy crap, you can put drawings and text together, what? So I ended up enrolling at Sequential Arts Workshop, year-long program in person. Now it's all online. So speaking of the past to the
Right,
future and like the present. So yeah, I did SAW, and then my soul was really hungry, so I found CCA, and I met really incredible cartoonists there. And yeah, after that, I ended up teaching at SAW, and then now a lot of what I teach has a lot to do with our graphic novel intensive. I'm currently working on a graphic novel, and I think it's really helpful to be like, hey, this is my graphic novel in progress. I hate working on it sometimes. What do you feel? You know, and like that's really nice for our students to be like in progress and be like, look at my InDesign file. Like, look at this like weird sketch I did in my notebook or whatever. So that seems to be the most helpful thing so far as an instructor is like being in work.
I split the difference a little bit because I started as, my undergrad as a meteorology major, and I made it through the first year and realized that I could, I could be a mediocre meteorologist or kind of a mediocre painter. And I was like, well, shit, I'm going to go be a mediocre painter.
At least it's not alliterative.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Less
Very
insulting.
I didn't want to be an MM. I'll be an MP, right? No, and while I was in school, I took my first comic studies class, which they had to like sneak in as like visual seeing modes, graphic, narrative, and bleebity blue, because if they had called it anything like comics, then it would not have gotten approved as a course. But so that was like really enlightening. I'd read Understanding Comics just because I was a comics fan, but like as a kid, comics were a thing you collected and read. It wasn't a thing you did, So it was kind of the first time I had read any of like Roberta Gregory or some of these people who really I wouldn't have had access to in any other way. And then, to be entirely honest, I thought I was going to be a painter forever, and I wanted to go back to grad school. And I was simultaneously making my first comics ever. And again, like there weren't many resources to know how to make them, and they're not very intuitive to make. And so I literally screwed up my Google search while I was looking for grad schools and like comic materials, and came across the CCA MFA in comics, like 100% by accident, and ended up being like, oh no, that's it. And I took my very bad, very first comics I was making, and I was like, this is my portfolio. And they showed pity on me. But yeah.
That's very, I mean, it's interesting. I love teaching comics because I feel like it's such an interdisciplinary, obviously, field, in that when I teach it, we have students who are from art, from meteorology, from criminology, from, it's so cool. It just makes for a really interesting class. I had a student who was, analyzing crime because he's a criminology major. I had another one who was in our urban planning, and he was analyzing all of the buildings and like how, like representations of space, which I never would have thought of. So I think it's so interesting how everyone kind of finds it from these different fields and directions, and it's interesting also, you talk about how you kind of came to comics through different pathways, different majors, different approaches, and also, and finding it. And I don't think, like you said, you had one comics class.
Yeah.
Like, I think that was actually pretty cool. Like, it didn't exist.
Yeah, that it was there at all. Yeah.
Yeah, that it existed at all. I mean, like, when I was in school, because I'm a million years old, but like there were no comics classes. Like, I don't think I ever saw one until I proposed teaching one. And I've told this story before, but related to what you were saying, the first time I proposed this comics class, it's not at the institution I'm at now, but it was a different institution, and it was something like, comics and culture, blah, blah, blah. I had the reading list and I had the description, and it was rejected. And then I changed the name of it to multimodal literacy and something like that. But the book list,
stupid.
the same, and the description were exactly the same. But I just changed the title, and they're like, "Oh, multimodal literacy. Well, then that will get approved, right?" It's so funny. Yeah, it's just funny funny that
And the stigma is real, and it's like
Right?
you kind of have to trick people into.
Exactly. Like I had to
becoming
kind of had to
accepted.
trick people, and
Yeah.
I wish we could get them to like actually just read some comics
Right,
and be like, But in any case, I'm curious. We have these programs. Thinking about the present, like what are you seeing today? What are you excited about in terms of comics education?
We'll go in reverse order.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Heather.
One of the things I'm excited about is the proliferation of comics programs, and like not just comic studies, which is fantastic and beautiful and wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you very much. But you know, the practice of comic making, right? And that's again, those resources used to be really difficult and kind of esoteric. You'd have to divine how things were made out of the kind of the ether of reading a comic, or go sort of like haunt the conventions and figure out, you know, and what was going on, and being able to create programs that have structure, some training, resources, the resources that institutions can bring, which really expands also what you can do, because again, like, usually your reading dictates what you want to make, right? And so you'll come with an idea, and then you get to expand, have more tools, broader vision, and with more programs, that means we get different kinds of focuses too, right? Different areas where each program is going to bring their expertise to bear. That's really exciting for me.
I think for me, first off, I love institutions because I went to grad school, but I love working outside of an institution. You know, I'm working in Florida. Like, everything is really weird right now. So I'm really excited that I work with a ton of like BIPOC, trans, autistic, neurodivergent people that want to make comics about Palestine and about, you know, decolonizing comics that we can do at SAW that UF can't take away from us. University of Florida is the Gainesville college that I went to. Loved it, blah, blah, blah. But they really love war profiteering, and I love working with people at SAW that are like, oh yeah, like we're kind of outside of that. Like, no one can take this away from us. So I think for me, that's like the most exciting thing about working in comics today and working at SAW.
Yeah, what's been really cool at SAIC in my time there, you know, I was a grad student there starting in 2015 and have been there like teaching since I left there. Left being a grad student, and already I was like, wow, this is so. I remember the first class I TA'd for was so cool, where it was like we were going around the room like, what are people into? It was an offset printing course, so it wasn't even a comics course. And people were like, yeah, I do sculpture, a little bit of performance and video and comics. And I was like, oh, whoa, this is so, like, this is a new, like, sort of generational shift where it's like that's a part of, it could be considered like an aspect of an artist's overall practice.
Yeah.
And I think that's super exciting to me, because that's kind of how I think about it, although comics is certainly like number one part of my practice. The thing that's cool also about like comics within SAIC is that it's been sort of grassroots, where it's been solely from like the demand from the students that it has grown. And that's like both good and bad, like, because the school's like, I guess we'll have a couple more comics classes. I don't know who can teach these things. And so like there's some people that are like, yes, this is a great, you know, like the people who make the decisions are not as informed about the medium and like what.
Yeah.
And so now we're finally at this turning point, like as of like this year and last year, where they're actually investing in having like full-time faculty that teach comics and like figuring out how to like level the courses, because it used to be like currently all the undergraduate comics classes except for like the senior capstone class are all the same level. So you have this weird thing where students are just taking the same classes over and over and over again. And there's not a sense of like, you take this and then you take this and then you get to the stuff that's like crazier and more in depth. But I find it really exciting that it's like it's grown simply because students are like, more. I want to do comics, and that's really encouraging to me. Like, yeah, as a teacher and as a cartoonist and as comics reader, just be like, and like you said, like the kinds of people who are making comics, the number of people who are making comics, is just really exciting.
I work in I go to a lot of K-12 schools, and I feel like the students are so excited about reading and writing and drawing and creating comics, and I feel like there's this groundswell of interest coming from K-12 and then moving up, and that's really exciting to me. And it's exciting to me I feel like to see these different comics programs arising and coming up, and I talk to a lot of students like in high school or undergrad, and I try and advise them, here's some places to go, and I think it's cool because there's like a place for everyone. So for example, there's some programs that are really focused on making, right?
Yes.
Which is wonderful, and so students should go there. And there are other universities which are focused more on scholarly study of, also amazing. And the program at Portland State, we try and do both, because we have like Shelley Bond is teaching comics editing, and Brian Bendis is teaching comics writing, and then we also have, like, I do comics theory, so we do a little bit of both. But for me, it's exciting because when I have a student who's like, no, I just want to draw, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to send you, check out this school, and this school.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to me that there really is a place, I feel like, for everyone, a good fit.
Yeah.
Which I think wasn't always
Yeah.
the case.
Yeah, and I still think it's still hard because some of these programs are newer. Even the ones that are older, like CCS, obviously Center for Cartoon Studies, has been around for a long time. But really doing this sucks so much. The marketing to let people know what it is that you do and what the kind of experience they're going to have there, so that you can match the student with the experience. Is really hard, and it's hard from a just institutional standpoint of like, I need all the students. Our program's for everybody. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, it is, and also it isn't, right? There are things that's impossible, right? It's one of the things I like about the diversity of the programs is like what SAW is doing, what SAW is capable of doing outside of the institution is right for so many people, and for other people who want to have a different kind of experience, like, who need that 4-year thing and whatever. Like, there are other places, That's awesome. And that's literally a thing that did not exist 10 years ago, like, just did not exist, period. Yeah.
And some people want to do comics and.
Yeah, right.
Comics and, different types of art, or meteorology.
Or
urban planning.
Biology.
Yeah, right.
Although, I mean, also, those are all great because, I'll see so many great, like, nonfiction comics or graphic medicine or, so I think it's all really valuable, and absolutely. You mentioned some of the challenge, like the challenge of getting the word out about what we do. My experience, maybe not everyone's experience, but it's like in comics education, it's always sort of, there's a lack of funding and resources and challenges around that. Like, we can only advertise so much because we only have so much room and so many classes. But I was curious, maybe what we talked about, some of the great things. What are some of the challenges? Obviously, there's a lot. What are some of the challenges that all of you are experiencing?
You want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I did.
I have a lot of problems with comics education. I have a lot of problems with it. I mean, I say this with a lot of love, but like, all of us are white up here, I think there's a problem with that. I think there's a problem with how prohibitively expensive Center for Cartoon Studies is. If I didn't have a scholarship at CCA, never would have gone there. I don't think SAW is perfect either. I think I know SAW is run by a Gen X white guy who I love with my entire heart, who hires his friends, and I'm his friend. So, I think there are a lot of at least I'm talking about I'm talking about my specific. SAW is like very much like a kind of like a grassroots, not necessarily an institution, but it's becoming an institution with its own culture, and it's actually this really beautiful thing. One of the answers to this problem is we like to consider SAW as a wealth distribution center. So we get all the boomers to write their memoirs and like do the boomer charge, and then try to give scholarships to like 15 Iranian students, and then give scholarships to trans people. So like Tom's vision, it's a great vision, but we're trying to address these problems that are much harder to address in these larger institutions that were literally built on the backs of enslaved people. So, I mean, I think SAW is in an interesting position. I think it's still positioned as like a pretty white institution. So I think that's one of the main problems with comics education right now, I think, but I could be wrong. Anyway.
Yeah, I think all of those, I would translate many of those problems to what I see at our institution. I think there's also, kind of added to, there's always a sort of the strangeness of how, what do people need from comics education, and that's something that's like a little bit difficult to have frank conversations. Like even when I feel like I'm being like trying to be really, really transparent with prospective students and current students, and being like, look, like you can draw your comics, you can come to CXC, you do like, the traveling comics roadshow, and you are a cartoonist, like, period. Like, no one is checking for your certification at the door.
But they don't believe you.
Yeah, and I think like, yeah, right. And so like you can totally have. You look at most of the great successful cartoonists. Like almost none of them have terminal degrees, right? So that I think is a big thing where you're kind of like, well, how do you make an argument for spending that money? I don't know. For me, going to graduate school, I had all sorts of like incredible. My timing was like impeccable. I got to do all these incredible things. Peter was there with me when Chris Ware taught one class at SAIC. And Peter was a student in the class, and I got to be the TA, which was insane. So I was like, it was worth it for me. But I think also there was an aspect to that where I was like, I was working my day job and drawing my comics, and I kind of like hit a wall with like what I felt like I could do with my life then, and I was like, I think I need to do something drastic, and it's like, maybe I need to just burn all this money in this ritual to be like, now I'm a professional and I can like get on with my adult life. And I think, I don't know, there's something to that, and maybe something that can be affected kind of psychologically, institutionally, magically by being like, this is an MFA in comics. Comics is a real thing that you can get an MFA in, therefore like these are real professionals. But then like, is there a professional world that can receive these people? Not quite, but sort of, but yes, but no. So that thing is quite complicated. And yeah, I try really hard in those like early conversations, interviews, etc., to just be like really transparent about it all. But some people, people need to make their own decisions and forge their own path, and so it's, I think that's sort of like the main thing in my mind. It's like, I think it's valuable. I think you could go to school for comics for 10 years, and still be learning things in your 10th year. Like, it's such a deep subject. But you can also just go and do it. Right?
Forever.
Yeah. You can just go and do it and not have to, get educated. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, you're kind of pointing to a professionalism piece, like how do you live? Like, and it's one of my great joys is when my students go out and they graduate and they get jobs and they are making great comics and hopefully having health insurance and dental insurance, and it's like my great joy to see them doing that. And I always volunteer at the Eisner Awards, and I saw one of my former students coming back with a book and that that they had worked on. It was like so amazing to see that. And so I'm trying to work on helping students sort of like, how do you take the classwork and then take the next step, like to make a living, whether it being as a cartoonist or in editorial. Like, a lot of my students don't realize that there's jobs in marketing, in editing, in all of these different fields within comics. It's, there are a lot of opportunities, and trying to develop that sort of like, and also like, how do you write a contract? How do you not get taken advantage of? That's kind of comics history, right? Is taking advantage of creative people, and trying to sort of help support them on that journey. So that's sort of a piece that I'm trying to, as I look to the future, that I want to develop. And I'm curious, as we'll get to the future part, like as you look forward, what are you guys wanting to like work on in your own, either in your own teaching or more institutionally, or just
If I could step in on that one, because we're literally doing some of these things. Like, Craig also works with me.
Oh, nice.
We're literally doing some of these things. Those things you were talking about right now. So we are in our contracts unit where they're writing their own
Nice.
contracts so that they can understand what the terms of the contract
Right.
actually mean, because they're scary and weird, but they're understandable. Like they don't have to be scary and weird. And there's like we kind of talk about this in indirect and direct ways constantly about how do we make value, right? Like how do we make this a valuable experience? And you can't bring everything to it, because then you'll get a little bit of nothing, right? You know, if you're trying to do all of it, then you won't get. So it's really trying to figure out what is the priority that we're going to focus on. Like what are the skills, what are the professional practices, what are the things that make this degree worth having? Simultaneous, because you don't need a degree in comics to make comics. Like the first thing I'll say to every cartoonist, every student, current students, you don't need this degree to do this. You do not need it. You have to want it, and it has to make sense for you. And if it doesn't make sense for you, then you shouldn't do it. Because why would I curse you with that debt? That's insane. Yeah, so it's constantly the negotiation of like, how do we create a program that meets needs, increases value, and then leverage whatever connections we have to make that value continue. Right? Like set you up for at least a couple years where there's some sort of thing that you can do. And it changes all the time. The priorities of the students change. The students that grew up reading webcomics have different goals and needs and aspirations. Like, but again, like they came in with one thing, we give them a broad thing, they find something new. So that's also, so it's a constant kind of negotiation. We have this conversation over and over and over and over again, you know, as time has gone on.
Yeah, just to double check, you're talking because I got lost in the sauce.
Yeah, I talk too much.
No. We're talking about like the future of comics and what we're excited about.
Yeah, well, comics education.
Comics education.
Yeah. 'Cause your program has changed and adapted, and
So much. Yeah, just like, I guess to jump back to the past really quick, the pandemic made SAW completely visible. We took over the Believers Friday night workshops. So now we do a Friday night workshop 52 weeks of the year, a free workshop every single Friday night with a different cartoonist from everywhere. I mean, we've had them in Australia and like all over. And now the big thing I'm noticing, and this might just be like Tom Hart's like, you know, visionary like ideas like really stuck in my head. But for me, I think the future is when I see a student finish something. So I think it's really different for me in terms of SAW very much encourages like get your day job, marry the person with insurance, you know, like take care of your kids, you have mom obligations. Like we're very much like, you know, that's our people, like the folks that we have a lot of federal workers that lost their jobs that came to SAW or something like that. So obviously it's going to be a little different than like 18 to 22-year-olds being like, what do I want to do with my life? I was that 18 to 22-year-old, you know? And I guess what I'm trying to say is the biggest success that I see in our future and like with each student is like they finished that comic. They're published in our anthology. They applied to the Gutter anthology. They found SAIC or they found something else they wanted to do that's like within that realm. Sorry, Justin Hall just walked by. And yeah, I think the big emphasis at SAW is like if you finish your comic, you're already a success. Like you're already a successful cartoonist because so many people don't finish. And comics are so grueling. So yeah, finishing is success.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, I agree with that totally. And I'm excited that, and it's been a funny thing in my own life, just like, you know, being sort of like coming out of like the punk and DIY scenes and being like, no, we're just gonna fucking do it ourselves and we don't need anybody. To now like at this new phase of my life where I'm like in this institution that's very complicated and you know all of those things. But like also, I think what recent years have taught us is that like we do need institutions. Like and I really feel that way. Like we need places that are preserving values outside of the marketplace. And that's libraries, that's colleges, all these places, like desperately we need to protect them. And so culture just needs them because culture is something that exists partially in the marketplace, but like the marketplace can destroy culture as well, I think. And so Yeah, just coming to this panel almost directly from having just toured the Billy Ireland too. I'm just like, yes, like we need this kind of space to like just preserve this history. Like, and you hear these stories about how precarious that history was. Like we could have lost all of those newspaper strips very easily if there hadn't been a Bill Blackbeard or, you know, these people. And so I think I'm really excited that, you know, I want comics to remain punk and DIY and challenging, because it's what's powerful about it is that you don't need the degree to do it. You don't need anything. You just need some way of like reproducing your drawings, period, and then you're participating in the culture. And so, but that culture also needs to be preserved and be able to be studied and considered and put into perspective with other aspects of culture, because it's just as important. So I'm really excited that institutions are paying attention to that, and that it's coming sort of from the grassroots of the people within there and people's love of comics. So, yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point, you know, for all the problems of working within an institution, and I'm at a public university with lots of funding issues, but when I started the comics program 10 years ago, I wasn't sure what would happen, but it's become this hub for the pros in the area, and so that has been really exciting to me, to have this little place where the students and the comics pros who, you know, we have people teach who don't need to teach, but they're doing it because they want to mentor. And we do a lot of, I can't do everything for free, you know, there are courses, but we do workshops, lectures, readings, whenever I can, doing free stuff.
Yeah.
You know, because as you say, you don't have to have the degree.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's exciting to me to see, you know, these generations coming together, the you know, the new comics folks, and then the pros who've been doing it for years and years, and preserving that history, and that legacy is exciting, and hopefully opening it up to more and more people, because that's another thing that's so exciting about comics, is you don't need a lot of stuff to do it, you know.
Right.
So that's
all you need.
And kind of to your point, like there's a need and a responsibility to be intentional with who gets access to those resources, right? So that more fucking people get access to the resources.
Yeah.
I mean, just there's no other way around it. Like, and there's a temptation to be like, oh, well, the cream will rise to the top. No, it won't. Like, if you let things move the way that the society will move, it will suppress the people who it will suppress, because it's advantageous to do so, and those people will not get the access to resources, to a thing I could make with this name tag, you know, and that's insane. You know, that is absolutely, it's bananas. And so like there is a responsibility, especially if you're at an institution, to leverage those resources, to be intentional. And how that works is not yet, I don't know, I'm new enough that I don't have any idea. But like the responsibility exists nonetheless.
Yeah.
And sorry.
No, the responsibility, we're literally white people in the US.
Yeah.
Like we have literal, actual blood on our hands. Like we have to be responsible for, you know, spreading comics to not just other white people.
we have about, I don't know, 12, 15 minutes. Are there questions that people have? Yes.
Hi, so I'm Jeff Long, I'm the director of the games program down at Miami University outside of Cincinnati. I did my master's in comparative media studies at MIT, where comics were a subset of what we were talking about, looking specifically at how they fit the larger connective tissue between things. And that's kind of what I'm starting to observe in the next generation of creators. So they're growing up with characters like N.D. Stevenson, Nate Stevenson, as role models that are moving and relatively, I'm not going to say effortlessly, because there's a lot of effort, right? They're connecting comics and illustrated novels and stuff together. And I'm trying to figure out, is it better to try and have like a separate comics program and a separate games program and a separate like film program, or it's worth waging the war to try and build up like that sort of comparative media studies theory and practice approach to try and foster more creators like Stevenson, more creators like Dana Terrace, right? I was wondering what you guys thought and what you were thinking along those lines. Especially, Conor, because you brought up a bit about learning from screenwriters. And
Yeah,
everything else.
I mean that's sort of how we have a brand new comics MFA at SAIC, and that's how it functions. It's basically just a door into the broader studio MFA for people who make comics. Like it's not actually its own department, because comics classes at SAIC are taught in wildly different departments. Like fibers has a comics class. There's a comics class in the fashion department. Most of them are painting and drawing. I have one like print media. Yeah, it's like they're all over the place. So, but then students come in and they can advise with whomever they want. They can take mostly whatever classes they want. And so it's an interesting model. I think we do need to build up the core support for them at our school, but I think that's really cool. But I also think about, as an educator, I always think about this quote from Paul Chan, where he's like, the educational institution should be conservative because it pushes the students to be progressive and to rebel. We give them a structure so that they can work against it. If you're just like, hey, I feel this a little bit at SAIC because it's like, what kind of artist do you want to be? Whatever. People are just like, like it helps to be like, you have to do this, and they're like, oh fuck you, man. Like, and then there you get like a little bit of friction and people get a little fire to like build their own thing. So I think. It's about finding the right balance, and it's also like we were saying earlier, kind of finding the right students for the program. But I don't know if that was a good answer or not. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, and I would also just say, I have found, and I don't know about your experiences, but finding a home for comics programs is a challenge.
Right,
Because
yeah.
people are like, at least in a traditional, university, it's like, oh, well, does it belong in English? Does it belong in art? Does it belong? And I'm like, all of the things.
And even in art, it's like,
And
is it illustration?
Right,
Is it,
it's like
yeah,
this whole
it's like,
thing.
yeah.
And when I created this program, I was like, okay, I want it to be interdisciplinary because we have courses in psychology and art and English and world languages. But the upper administration was like, we need a place for the funding to go. It needs a line item, and so it's in the English department because that's where I am. But it doesn't make sense. And I was like,
Yeah.
but no, we're interdisciplinary. And they're like, but the whole institution is not created, it's not structured in such a way to support interdisciplinary work. So it is an ongoing challenge, which I think that's something that we're trying to figure out,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we go over here and then go over there? Okay.
So
Keith,
I'm a long-time comics collector, and I always saw the ad for Joe Kubert's school.
Oh, yeah.
Let maybe your marketing departments put an ad in the comics.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my friends actually went to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ended up
I've-
working for Marvel as an inker.
I think Steve Lieber did.
I'm
Anyway.
just saying that
At Piscor, yeah.
I don't see.
Yeah, they're not as
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this. Yeah.
No,
That's
no.
a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know. Yeah, that's.
I will bring that back to you.
Literally,
Yeah.
literally the only
Put an ad in
school
Bubbles,
I ever
yeah.
see advertised in comics.
Well, and that's
And I
a
just thought
perfect
that was
match,
odd.
right? It's a perfect match for what they do, and that's why it's such a challenge, right? Because I also have friends who've been to Qbert, and like when you go to Qbert, you go to learn one style of comic
Yeah.
making, to work for one set.
It's an
of
industrial,
comic
trade
But
industry.
there are so many different kinds of comics now.
Yeah.
Especially, and actually there always have been. I mean, not everybody loved reading their comics in the papers.
Yeah, and
Who knew where you could go to learn that kind of
if
stuff?
first second's
Instead of
down
the
for
kid.
putting an ad for my school in the back of their book, I would be interested in figuring it out. But that
That's
is
what I'm saying.
like comics have those kind of comics have this commercial element where they thrive on selling ads, and so buying ads makes sense to do. But the comics that like largely we create and train to create are not that kind of commercial comics. So it remains a challenge.
Yet, you've described how comics are expanding to
True enough.
completely
Yeah.
new industries that
Yeah.
want to use them for whatever they're doing it for, maybe to design new fabrics. I mean patterns.
Mhm.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But because sequential storytelling can be almost anything, right?
Mhm.
Cave art,
Yeah,
Star
Yeah.
Trek.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends on where you are.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, and archaeology would be that.
Yes.
So first thing that came to mind is that it was wild to mix the Sonus is at SFSU.
Yeah, yeah.
and It's a humanities.
Yeah.
This is wild to me. But the question I have is specifically about kind of the idea, I suppose, industry standards is a good place to start, where it's just like, when teaching, I was wondering how you might think about or conceptualize the scope of what one might do. I think the place that I find myself often stuck at is scripting, because there is no standardized script in comics.
Yeah.
You could always look to, I usually talk about, like, this is a stage play, this is a screenplay, and these are comic scripts, and it's like 15 different types. Like, how do you find yourself being at the kind of like the forefront at the beginning of the academic thought of comics, and feel about kind of creating what might become a sense of dogma coming out of your programming? The idea that us as educators, are kind of creating borders as well as avenues in terms of the way that people might think about comics. Is that in your mind as you're thinking, like, you know, especially like the idea of like giving them freedom versus giving them restrictions, and how that might have long-term repercussions? Does that pressure ever frame how you approach?
I have so much to say about this. Do you
Yeah,
mind
yeah.
if I jump in?
Please.
Because I'm the main instructor for the graphic novel intensive, and it's really hard to make a graphic novel without a script. And this is the question I come up against every single student. Out of like the 80 every year, it's every single student is like, what's a comic script? And everything you're describing is exactly, I think we're still creating the borders. Like, I like that metaphor a lot, even though, like, whatever. Borders. No, I'm just kidding. But like, yeah, I really like that metaphor a lot. Something that I always start out with, at least for our students, and I don't know if this would apply, like I'm sure it would, is like just the idea of free writing. And I know a lot of my students don't enjoy writing, so I have to like work with them, and it's really case by case. But for the most part, it's been really, 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 really helpful, even if they don't want to make a script, for them to download an app that will like transcribe their story if they're a little older and they don't have the mobility ability to like type or to write. They download this app called like Otter or whatever, where it'll transcribe their free write. Or I literally assign them like the Pomodoro free writing. Like, you have to write for 20 minutes, and then you have to go touch grass for 10, and then you have to write for 20 more minutes. And then what we'll do is we'll work with that free write to turn it into basically like a screenplay. Because I always use the metaphor with my students that, like, if you're making a graphic novel all on your own, and again, this is with like a graphic novel, so I understand it could be super different with like strips or you know, stuff like that. And I work specifically from writing, and I really like graphically adapting things. I always tell them, like, you're the set designer, you're the costume designer, you're the lighting director. You're every department head. So actually, screenplays make a ton of sense. And I will literally, I pulled up Lady Bird. All screenplays are free on Google. Like, you can just look up any screenplay. And I was like, go take your free write and put it into that context, and then like split it up by pages. Don't even start with panels. So I've started doing, that's been my personal ethos around like how to, some students are going to be like, no, I'm just going to thumbnail right now. And I'm like, great. I could never do that, but you're really talented. But that's my personal ethos. How do you guys deal with that with your students?
Yeah, it's so hard. Yeah, I think it's a combination of like giving structures and like giving help when it's needed, but like not imposing it too hard. Because I guess I'm always like trying to emphasize the plurality of cartoonist approaches, and like, I mean, my favorite thing is to be like, look at this Chris Ware page. He does not write scripts.
That's crazy.
Like, he does not do thumbnails. He starts in the top left-hand corner of the page and starts drawing. And so, like, you can do that, like that.
And he does 1 page a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then there's people who like write every single word and then draw every single word. And so it's sort of like trying to, I think it's like giving those tools and then trying to like be like, you build it yourself, like you build your own process, like what works, I always try to get at like where do you feel like creative and energetic? Like, is it in the writing? Is it in the drawing? Like, start there and then like build. Yeah. It's just like about preserving that energy, really. I mean, that's what it is for my own practice.
Any true craftsman creates their own tools eventually.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, physically or not.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, I let Craig do it. And then, no, that's not true. We collaborate. No. So, my personal like teaching philosophy is I'd really rather teach artists how to be the artists that they are, right?
Right,
I
yeah.
just want to teach them to be themselves. And sometimes that means I create structures and they work inside the structures. And one of the things that I say over and over again is you never have to do this again. Like, this is what we're doing in this class. You never have to do this again. If you hate this, then you've actually learned something extremely important, which is throw this away.
Yeah.
Like, this process is bad for you.
Yeah, and the tricky thing is just being like, that doesn't mean that you're not a cartoonist. That doesn't mean
Yeah.
that you're not good at
Yes.
this. Yeah,
Yeah,
just like,
like-
trying to like build them up and be, yeah.
Welcome to this class where we're going to talk about
Yeah.
this in this way. We're going to do it in this format. And so, like, there is a thing called the standardized comic strip, which is made by Steens and Camila Zhang. Zhang? I think so. So and then like Greg Pak has got a resource that you can use, the comic writer. And so like I try to make folks use those at least once in a class to like use that structure, because it's frustrating, it's hard, and like a lot of people don't really like writing, you know, and they don't like formatting even more, and you know, and we always end up with collaborators one way or another, whether it's an editor or, you know, our colorist or our inker. They all got to know what's going on, right? And so there's a responsibility to collaborate with them as well. But again, it's about creating that structure, saying work inside it, and then being like, and now it's yours to decide whether you want to stay inside that or not. Or and everybody's going to create their own tools. They'll just make their own hybrid.
And about, as you're all talking, I'm noticing there's this sense of wanting to empower the students and respect the students where they're at.
Yeah.
Like respecting their process. As you say, everyone's going to have something slightly different, and that's okay. So that's coming through as you're speaking. Unfortunately, our time for speaking is
All good.
done already. So I
Yeah.
want to thank all of you for coming, and especially thank our amazing panelists.
Thank you so much for
Yeah,
moderating.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really
really
appreciate it.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and come find us at our tables,
Yeah,
and we'll
come see
continue.
us.